Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I went to the grocery store today for some essentials, and unfortunately, they were all healthy picks: eggs, yogurt, and spinach. Not exactly my favorite. I managed to get in and out of the store without any unfortunate encounters with other people. While walking to my car, I heard an older lady trying to get the attention of a cart wrangler in the parking lot. She was a bit closer to the store than where I was parked in the same row. She was being ignored by a cart wrangler, even though she had a full cart of groceries and her car trunk was wide open. It didn't take a genius to figure out what she needed. So I walked over, confirmed her intention to get the groceries into her SUV, and proceeded to help her. It took me about 2 minutes. The whole time the lady was expressing her gratitude profusely, referring to me as a nice young man. At my age, it was more flattering than condescending. I'm in my mid to late 30s. Don't remind me. When I finished and made sure her trunk could close without crushing anything, I grabbed my own groceries. As I was about to leave, the lady grabbed my arm to stop me. She was an older white woman, but she didn't look frail. In fact, if she wasn't white and wore sandals, I'd bet she could hit a moving target from 30 yards away with one of her shoes. It was clear to me that staying on her good side was a wise choice. Think of her as a matron, not a frail grandma. I wasn't too thrilled about being grabbed, but she waved something green and papery in front of me. She explained that she had intended to give it to the cart wrangler who had ignored her, expressing her frustration with an eye roll. Instead of arguing because this wasn't the kind of woman you'd want to cross, I took the green paper. It was a $100 bill. I immediately tried to give it back, politely refusing and stating it was too much. The woman then gave me a stern look and warned me that if I didn't accept the money, she would become difficult. The urge to cover my ears was strong, not because she was yelling, but because the last time I heard that tone, my ear was pinched, and I was dragged to an authority figure. Rather than argue, I may have been born at night, but not last night, I took the money. As soon as she let go of me, I felt something slam into my side, knocking me off balance. It was a full cart of groceries. I regained my balance and saw a woman in her 40s, wearing large sunglasses, staring at me from the back of her own SUV. She rudely instructed me to put her groceries in her car, stating she was in a hurry. She then proceeded to talk on her cell phone, avoiding eye contact, clearly expecting me to do her bidding. I was wearing black mesh shorts and a navy blue t-shirt, not the uniform of the grocery store employees, who wear white button-downs and khaki pants. Even if I worked there, it wouldn't have been okay to shove a loaded cart at someone. I stood there stunned at her audacity, my mouth opening and closing as I tried to figure out how to handle the situation. I had spent a lot of time in the gym, and this Karen had not. If things escalated, it wouldn't look good for me. Fortunately, I didn't need to do a thing. The older lady I had just helped walked over to the woman, who was still trying to avoid looking at either of us. The older woman got right in her face and cheerfully inquired if the rude woman had also had both of her hips replaced. The Karen looked confused and stammered, unsure how to respond. The older lady continued, explaining how I had helped her due to her hip replacements and inquiring about when the rude woman had her own hips replaced. The Karen, still confused, denied having any hip replacements and tried to brush off the conversation, claiming she was in a hurry. The older lady, with a sweet but sharp smile, then questioned the rude woman's behavior, pointing out that she seemed perfectly capable of loading her own groceries and criticizing her for shoving the cart at me instead of asking politely. The Karen, flustered, tried to defend herself but was quickly silenced by a stern look from the older lady. It was the kind of look that children prone to misbehavior know all too well, warning of severe consequences if the misbehavior continued. The older lady then instructed me to bring the cart over, stating that the rude woman was now ready to load her own groceries. I complied, pushing the cart over to them and leaving it near the two women. The older lady smiled at me and advised me not to spend all the money in one place. I gave her a quick salute, grabbed my bag, and headed for my own car. As I was leaving, I looked back to see the Karen still loading her bags into her car, with the older lady supervising. I might have chuckled to myself. When I lost my job at the big tech company downtown, the economy was tanking, and layoffs were happening left and right. I was devastated, but I knew I had to keep pushing forward. With my savings dwindling, I decided to start my own web design business from home. It seemed like the perfect solution: low overhead, flexible hours, and I could use my skills to help local businesses. Little did I know, this decision would lead to a confrontation I never saw coming. I live in a neighborhood with a homeowners association. The HOA president is this guy who thinks he's the king of our little cul-de-sac kingdom. Let's just call him Mr. President. At first, everything was going smoothly. I was landing clients, working hard, and slowly building my business. But then one day, there was a knock at my door. Mr. President greeted me and informed me that they had received reports of me running a business out of my home, which was against HOA regulations. I tried to explain that I wasn't disturbing anyone and that it was just me and my computer, but he wouldn't listen. He insisted that rules were rules and that I needed to cease operations immediately. I tried to reason with him and explain my situation, but he wouldn't budge. The next few weeks were a nightmare. I kept working, trying to be discreet, but the HOA was relentless. Fines started piling up and I received daily threats of legal action. That's when I decided to fight back. I researched local laws and found out that my home-based business was perfectly legal. I presented this information to the HOA board, but they dismissed it outright. Mr. President claimed that their rules superseded any local ordinances and that I had agreed to them when I moved in. I argued that they couldn't just make up rules that went against the law. Karen, a board member, condescendingly suggested that if I didn't like it, I could always move. I was furious but determined. I continued working, ignoring their threats. That's when things took a turn for the worse. I had to go out of town for a client meeting. It was a big opportunity and I couldn't miss it. My dad, who's a bit of a gun enthusiast, offered to house sit for me. He was worried about the escalating situation with the HOA. My dad reassured me that he would keep an eye on things while I was gone. I thanked him but pleaded with him not to do anything crazy, insisting that I was handling the situation. Little did I know, crazy was exactly what was coming. I was gone for just 2 days. When I returned, my dad was waiting for me with a grim expression. He told me that I wouldn't believe what had happened. He explained that, on the second night, he heard noises coming from my home office. Thinking it was a burglar, he grabbed his gun and went to investigate. What he found was beyond belief. Mr. President, Karen, and 2 other HOA board members were in my office rifling through my files and unplugging my computer equipment. My dad informed me that he had them all zip-tied in the living room and had called the cops. I rushed inside and sure enough, there they were. The HOA Dream Team, sitting on my couch with their hands bound, looking like kids caught with their hands in the cookie jar. I confronted them, demanding to know what they thought they were doing. Mr. President stammered out an excuse, claiming they were just enforcing the rules, and that they had to take matters into their own hands, because I refused to comply. Karen chimed in, insisting that I had no right to run a business there, and that they were protecting the community. These people had broken into my house, attempted to steal my equipment, all because they didn't want me working from home. The police arrived shortly after, and they were surprised by the scene. As the officers took statements, the reality of the situation started to sink in for the whole crew. The officer informed them that they were all under arrest for breaking and entering, attempted theft, and trespassing. Mr. President tried to argue that, as the homeowners association, they had the right to inspect properties. The officer quickly shut him down, explaining that they didn't have that right without permission or a warrant. The HOA board was dissolved, and a new, more reasonable one was elected. My neighbors, many of whom had been silently suffering under the old regime, came forward with their own stories of harassment and overreach. All I wanted was to make an honest living from my own home. I never expected to end up in a showdown with a power-hungry HOA president and his minions. My dad was a mechanic and he taught me everything he knew about cars. I spent my weekends helping him in the garage, learning to fix up old clunkers and give them new life. When I finally landed a decent job after college, I knew I wanted to treat myself to a new ride. Nothing too flashy, mind you, but something reliable and stylish. That's when I stumbled upon this deal for a 2019 Ford Ranger. The color caught my eye immediately, a vibrant orange red that the salesman called hot chili pepper red. He mentioned it was an upgrade color, usually costing an extra $750, but this particular truck was on sale due to it being a demo model. I couldn't believe my luck. The color reminded me of my dad's old toolbox, and I knew he'd get a kick out of it. Plus, it was practical enough for my needs but still had that little touch of uniqueness. I signed the papers that day feeling like I'd hit the jackpot. For weeks, I catch myself smiling every time I walked up to my truck in the parking lot. It stood out just enough to make me feel proud, but not so much that it screamed for attention. Little did I know my little slice of happiness was about to collide with someone else's misplaced sense of entitlement. It was a regular Tuesday afternoon. I was on my way home from work waiting at a stoplight when I noticed a new Bronco pull up beside me. The first thing that struck me was the color. It was identical to my truck. I grinned, thinking how cool it was to see another vehicle in this unique shade. That's when I heard a sharp rap on my window. I looked over to see the Bronco's driver, a woman probably in her mid-40s, gesturing frantically for me to roll down my window. Confused but curious, I obliged. The woman immediately demanded to know where I got the color for my truck. I explained that it came with the vehicle, thinking she might appreciate it. However, her response was unexpected and hostile. She claimed that the color was exclusively hers, part of a special edition Bronco package. Confused, I tried to clarify that there must be a misunderstanding, as this was the factory color of my truck. The woman accused me of lying and insisted that I must have painted it to copy her car. Her voice grew louder as she demanded that I change it back immediately. I attempted to explain that this was a standard Ford color called hot chili pepper red and that it was available on multiple models. The woman vehemently denied this, insisting it was her special color and threatening to report me for fraud if I didn't change it. At this point, I was torn between laughing and being genuinely concerned for this woman's mental state. I tried once more to reason with her, explaining that this was my truck's original color and that Ford makes this color for different models. I emphasized that it wasn't exclusive to her Bronco. The woman's frustration escalated as she explained that she had paid extra for this color because it was supposed to be rare and special. She accused me of ruining it for her. I apologized for her feelings but maintained that it wasn't my problem, suggesting she take it up with Ford if she was unhappy. The woman continued to insist that I needed to fix the situation, demanding that I repaint my truck immediately. As a light turned green and cars behind us started honking, I realized the conversation was going nowhere. I politely ended the interaction and drove off, leaving the woman visibly upset in her Bronco. As I pulled away, I could see her in my rearview mirror, face red as our vehicles, shouting something I couldn't hear. The whole way home, I couldn't stop shaking my head in disbelief. How could someone get so worked up over a car color? It was just paint, for crying out loud. I wondered if she went through life constantly finding things to be outraged about. When I got home, I called my dad and told him what happened. We had a good laugh about it, and he reminded me of all the times we'd seen identical cars on the road when I was a kid. It was a nice reminder that sometimes the best way to deal with entitled people is to just drive away and share the story with someone who'll appreciate the absurdity of it all. I hope the woman in the Bronco eventually realized how ridiculous she was being, but part of me suspects she's still out there, accosting innocent drivers with matching paint jobs, convinced the world is conspiring to copy her unique vehicle. I just hope for her sake and for the sake of traffic flow everywhere that she doesn't encounter too many more hot chili pepper red vehicles on the road. Growing up, I watched my mom, a nurse with an innate need to care for others, help our elderly neighbor next door. It began with small gestures, picking up groceries or shoveling snow, but gradually expanded to include driving her to doctor's appointments, cleaning her house, and arranging repairs. Mom never complained, finding fulfillment in helping someone in need. As our family prepared for a long-awaited 2-week vacation, Mom's dedication to our neighbor became apparent. The day before we left, she meticulously stocked the neighbor's fridge and pantry and arranged for Mrs. Johnson from across the street to check in regularly. Our neighbor warmly thanked Mom, insisting she had done more than enough and urging her to enjoy the vacation. The first week of our trip was blissful, filled with relaxation and family bonding. However, midway through the second week, a phone call shattered our peace. Mom's expression told me something was wrong before she even answered. On the other end was our neighbor's son, his voice raised in anger. He demanded that Mom return immediately to get his mother milk, disregarding our vacation and Mom's careful preparations. As Mom tried to explain the arrangements she'd made, the man continued to berate her. My dad, witnessing Mom's distress, intervened. He took the phone and firmly told the son that if he had a problem, he could take care of his own mother from now on. We were done helping. The incident cast a shadow over the remainder of our trip. When we returned home, we discovered the son had visited his mother only once during our absence, despite living just a town away. The neighborhood buzzed with disapproval of his behavior and sympathy for my mom. In the following weeks, whenever the son visited, my dad made a point of being outside smiling and waving as if nothing had happened. The son never reciprocated, just scowling and hurrying inside. One day, while gardening with Mom, we overheard a conversation next door. The elderly neighbor was asking her son for help with groceries and cleaning. He impatiently refused, suggesting she ask the neighbors. When she mentioned the neighbors had stopped helping, he tersely replied that she'd have to manage on her own as he couldn't come over all the time. As the son stormed out, he caught sight of us. For a moment, it seemed he might speak, but he just got in his car and drove away. I saw the conflict in Mom's eyes. She wanted to help, but knew it wasn't her responsibility anymore. That evening, we had a family meeting to discuss the situation. We decided to help with major tasks like lawn care, but leave daily assistance to the son. It was a difficult decision, especially for Mom, but we knew it was necessary. Over time, we noticed the son visiting more frequently. He never apologized, but there was a grudging respect in his eyes when he saw my parents. Our elderly neighbor managed, with occasional help from everyone in the neighborhood. It wasn't the same as before, but it was a sustainable compromise. In the end, this story isn't just about helping others, it's about finding the delicate balance between compassion and self-care, and understanding that true kindness sometimes means knowing when to step back. It's a lesson that has stayed with me, shaping my approach to helping others and setting healthy boundaries in my own life. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.